Crop News brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Good morning and thanks for staying with us at the show. We're at the 2013 Crop Production Update Conference here in Junction City. We're joined by Dr. Thompson. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Not the Dr. Thompson that everybody's used to seeing on a weekly basis on the show, but different Dr. Thompson, so thanks for being here. You're talking about weed resistance or weed control when it comes to corn.
Right.
And a couple tough years, drought. Does that play a role in managing weed?
Well, anytime we have adverse conditions and lack of rainfall, we never have as good of activity out of our herbicides as we would hope. And so, yes, it does complicate the weed management situation when we have these drought stress conditions.
Herbicide, lots of things on the market, lots of new things coming onto the market, I'm assuming. Is that correct? Or?
Well, we may have a lot of new names to herbicides, but unfortunately it's a blend of, in most cases, some of the same active ingredients that have been around for some time. We do have some new herbicides available to us in corn that is a new active ingredient, the pyroxasulfone. Excellent in terms of control of grasses, small-seeded broadleaf weeds, and has some pretty good activity on some of the large-seeded broadleaf weeds like velvet leaf. And that would include herbicides like Zidua, Anthem ATZ, and Fierce.
What makes them new and basically the chemical makeup that makes them more potent, I guess you might say?
Yeah, we don't see the same level of new active ingredients coming along. Once in a while we do get one, and there's usually some unique factor about that particular active ingredient in order for the product to be registered and fit into the market.
Western Kansas, I think is what you said, where you spend most of your time out in Western Kansas. As corn becomes more prevalent across the U.S., how important is it that we stay on top of this stuff?
Well, one of my main emphasis of work out in Western Kansas has been managing kochia. And of course we just documented glyphosate-resistant kochia here a couple of years ago, and it's blown up to be a serious problem. And so we've done quite a bit of work to not only monitor and evaluate when kochia germinates and emerges, but perhaps strategies that we can utilize to manage this weed early and season long. And so I think we have some plans in place, and we'll be talking about that at various locations here today and at various locations throughout the winter.
How devastating is that? I mean, we've got a plant that can be devastating, grows quickly, spreads quickly, and is now resistant. How devastating is that?
Well, the fact that kochia is also a tumbleweed and can spread across a field of where somebody might be an excellent manager, he's still dealing with kochia. If you have heavy populations of kochia, we can have zero yields, especially on dry land where we just don't have the additional moisture to share with weeds. Kochia can completely destroy a crop. And so it's really important that we get after this kochia, get after it very early in the season, and we'll be talking about that. A lot of March type of applications for controlling this kochia. Well,
we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, let's talk about no-till versus conventional till and kind of how that plays into that.
Okay.
We'll see you in just a minute.
Crop News brought to you by the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers and Kansas Wheat Commission. Together, we are Kansas Wheat.
Thanks for staying with us. Doctor, thank you for staying with us.
You bet.
We're talking about glyphosate-resistant weeds in corn, specifically in corn, and no-till versus conventional till. Any difference?
Well, clearly it is, because if you've got glyphosate-resistant kochia, glyphosate has been one of the key components that we've substituted for tillage. And so if you're in a no-till system and you depend on glyphosate, all of a sudden we've got some problems. And so what that suggests is that we have to have other active ingredients in place with that glyphosate, whether it be a dicamba-based product like a Status, a Distinct, or Banville, or a Starane type of product, or in fact one of our HPPD inhibitors like a Lotus, Impact, Armazon, you know, those types of products, we just won't get that kochia controlled. Now you mentioned conventional tillage, steel still works,
Right.
but sometimes steel doesn't fit very well out west in our dry environment where we really need no-till, we really need that residue in place to conserve moisture.
Is this becoming one of the noxious weeds, I guess you might say, here in the state?
It isn't a noxious weed. It doesn't probably fall on one of the world's worst weeds, but it is a serious problem.
For us here in Kansas, right.
in our drier environments, and we know that the problem not only occurs in Kansas, but on up through Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and on up into Canada. So it's fairly widespread.
You brought up earlier, you may have a neighbor who has a little bit in their pasture where you've managed it very, very well. Is that a good time that you guys should talk across the fence and go, you know, this is how I'm managing it?
You know, kochia is the greatest problem with kochia has been in our croplands. And if people are willing to spend the appropriate amount of dollars buying certain active ingredients, we do a good job managing the kochia. The point I made earlier was that because kochia is a tumbleweed,
Right.
even the good guys have kochia rolling across their fields all winter long and have to deal with kochia in the subsequent spring. And so, you know, we visit with a lot of good managers. We see managers that maybe aren't as good as we'd like to see, and we do see a lot of kochia growing in non-cropland areas, and all of those are sources of seed that roll around during the winter and create problems for us.
Extension, make sure you contact if you think you have a problem. Is that something you suggest to everybody?
Yeah,
if you think you've got a problem, contact your local extension agent?
Well, especially if you're not having an idea of how you ought to manage this, because I think we do have some pretty good strategies in place. All of our ag agents have had an opportunity to sit through a session where we've discussed this kochia management, and if they don't know, they know how to get a hold of us so that we can help somebody out.
Perfect. Dr. Thompson, very nice to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to be
Thank you
here.
for your time.